LinkedIn is a very intentional way of finding those ideal investors for you, building those relationships directly, and turning it into a system that once you set it up the right way, it runs 90% on autopilot, and you have a consistent flow of new opportunities and new investor leads.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odom and Steven Silverman.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odom, along with Steven Silverman. Steven, we're going to talk about something near and dear to our hearts.
Well, success in anything, it's about relationships and it's about communication, and everybody knows that.
I'll talk about money.
I beg your, well,
I don't care about the relationships with you, Steve. I care about money.
That's all you care about, Eric. Just money. But that other people care about other things, and that's why they do business. So today's topic is particularly interesting because it's something we all know a little bit about, but not enough. And we can leverage this tool to really make us successful in a lot of different endeavors.
Yeah. It's interesting. LinkedIn is our topic of conversation today. Raising money is, using LinkedIn to raise money. Over the course of my career, we've, raised quite a bit of money for various syndication deals that we've done, everything from Starbucks to apartment syndications to whatever. Things have changed over the years, and LinkedIn, people think about it being a resume cloud tool for you, but it's a lot more than that. I mean, you really have the ability to be able to connect with folks through LinkedIn and grow your business, whether it be real estate investing or working as a real estate broker or whatever business you happen to be in. And it's really a terrific tool. So we're excited to hear our guest today talk a little bit about that. In the meantime, if you have not done so, we would really appreciate you going on to the iTunes store and leaving us a review, or Stitcher and leaving us a review. It's very helpful for us. We work very hard to produce this show twice a month, and it's tough to get guests. And so everybody's busy, and it's, they want to make sure that they're investing their time properly, and that if they're going to come on our show, that it's going to be something that's worthwhile for them. So if you've not done so already, that it helps us, because they do go to the iTunes store to check to see the reviews that have been left and if people are actually listening. And so you guys could do yourselves a big favor as well as us by going onto the iTunes store or Stitcher and leaving us a review. We'll be happy to call you out and let you know that we hear you, and it's meaningful for both of us. So, Stephen, anything before we get rolling into our guest?
Let's roll into it. It's going to be a reasonably long episode because it's important. So let's go right into it. Today we have with us Yakov Smart. Yakov is considered to be the leading expert when it comes to attracting high net worth investors and raising capital through LinkedIn. He is the author of Disrupting LinkedIn and a sought-after authority by top business owners and sales leaders worldwide. Yakov has shared the stage with Samantha DeBianchi of Bravo's hit TV show $1 Million Listing, and has been a guest on numerous media outlets. He is a resident of Scottsdale, Arizona, and he is a proud leader of LinkedIn Lead Enterprises, where his webinars and training programs and consulting accelerators give people proven tools and techniques for transforming their LinkedIn profiles into priceless capital-raising assets. Yakov, welcome to the Invest Florida Show.
Hi there. Great to be here.
Hey, Yakov, really appreciate you investing time with us today. I think we actually met. I'd reached out to you on LinkedIn because I had read your book, Disrupting LinkedIn. Why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of how you got into the area that you're in now? Because, it's not really much of a stretch from focusing on general topics of LinkedIn, social media, to actually trying to find investors for deals in LinkedIn. So just give us a 30,000 foot overview of how you arrived here where we are today.
For sure. And it's a bit of a different pocket. Like you mentioned, I originally started the business. And when I authored Disrupting LinkedIn, the book that you're referring to, I was working with a number of different business owners. The common thread was people wanted to find clients and prospects using LinkedIn. The way I got into working with primarily real estate entrepreneurs and people wanting to find investors and raise capital for things like syndications is, my very first client who wanted to find investors, they were putting together a deal club. And they asked me if I thought it was possible to target mega high net worth individuals, people like angel investors who were sometimes worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on LinkedIn. I said I thought it was. And so we developed a strategy where they could connect with these people, build relationships, and connect them with different startups and investment opportunities. And of course, it was a smashing hit. And kind of serendipitously, I've had top influencers in this space, especially the real estate syndication space, reach out as well and engage me on a couple projects. And then from there, I saw how big of an area this was, especially now, the alternative investments and doing things like real estate syndications and that business model. And also what an opportunity LinkedIn presents for finding high net worth investors and building those key relationships. And it's an area, Eric, that not too many people are talking about just yet. Our clients and students are very early in the game in terms of this new way of finding investors using LinkedIn.
Yeah, we try to talk with our agents about using LinkedIn, but I think most of them, even the younger ones who are social media sophisticated, it's almost like a paperweight that sits on their desk. They don't really know how to use it. They don't really think it has a lot of value. And particularly when you're talking about folks that are longer in their career, they're like, well, I have an account. I have 100 people that I'm connected with. I don't really know what it's for. They don't really get it. And if you tell them that it actually is a terrific business opportunity, tool, if you use it properly, but they don't. So how do you kind of get them off of the sidelines to understand that there's really a gold in those hills, the LinkedIn hills?
Yeah, because what Eric said is true. Like, everybody belongs to LinkedIn. Everybody's got something on it, and yet nobody really knows how to use it.
It's just a resume. People throw it out there as a resume, and it's just such a waste to do that. So maybe you can kind of talk to us about, the 30,000 foot view of that and how you get somebody convinced that there's really gold in the LinkedIn hills.
Well, first and foremost, it's a mentality. Whether we're talking about commercial real estate brokers, whether we're talking about syndicators, people who want to be syndicators, and the first mentality is you want to constantly be building your list of leads. You want to constantly be filling your funnel or your pipeline with potential opportunities. Even if you're having a huge month, it's important to have a constant lead and a deal flow, right? It's sort of real estate and business 101. Yet a lot of people kind of forget to do that and sometimes settle for the relationships they already have or the deals and investor leads that they already have. And the problem with that is it creates kind of a feast and famine cycle. And that's, sort of the issue with just doing business by referral in general, where, it's kind of creates that roller coaster of cash flow and revenue. Whereas if you look at a platform like LinkedIn, if we take the approach that, you have responsibility as a business owner, whether you're a real estate broker, whether you're doing syndications looking for investors, to go out and generate leads and build those relationships proactively to grow and scale to the place that you want to be and hit your key outcomes. The very first thing to do is to take that responsibility piece and then we'll say, I wonder which platforms can best serve that purpose for me, right? And with today's world, the world obviously has changed a lot recently. Being able to do it online is an absolute necessity. And that's where LinkedIn comes into the picture. So a lot of people that have LinkedIn profiles that look like resumes, that's one way of using LinkedIn. It's kind of the old way of using LinkedIn. And what we talk about is a new way of using LinkedIn. As a matter of fact, it's sort of become the new LinkedIn. And I'll start with some stats for people to understand as well. There's about 700 million plus users across the world right now who are on LinkedIn, active users. And these are people from around the world where the average household income of a LinkedIn user is $115,000. So people on LinkedIn are there for different reasons than social media. They're there to learn. They're there to build relationships. They're there to grow, right? And you have an opportunity when you use LinkedIn as a marketing platform for building trust, or building those key relationships that really move the needle for you. You have an opportunity to become that trusted advisor and to really use it to elevate your personal brand and to elevate your lead generation. Because what we're talking about, especially for finding investors, we're talking about developing a system, a process, something that you can depend on that's going to generate opportunities to build relationships with investors continuously and consistently, right? And so I think every business owner, every real estate syndicator is looking for that consistent system that's going to increase their deal flow. And that's what LinkedIn has the opportunity to be. Now, when you compare LinkedIn to other platforms, for example, online, right, that are available, other social media, let's say Facebook, or even things like blogging and SEO, the differences become even clearer because LinkedIn, you can build hyper-targeted lists where the targeting of the types of people that you want to reach on LinkedIn, who you can reach directly, completely going past the gatekeeper, you can build those lists. For example, a list of accredited investors or high-income individuals, people like doctors, attorneys, CEOs, corporate executives, institutional investors, potential JV partners. You can build all those types of targeted lists on LinkedIn when you really know how to use the platform in quite literally a matter of minutes, and without having to pay thousands of dollars to some list broker out there. Versus a place like Facebook, to be able to actually leverage it as a lead generation platform, it requires thousands of dollars to do it effectively in Facebook advertising, where you're sorting through lower quality leads because people are on there for different reasons. They're watching cat videos, right? They're there to be right. entertained or to talk politics, or, who knows what goes on Facebook. Versus LinkedIn, it's a completely different platform, and Facebook ads are a whole lot more expensive and you have a whole lot less control. So LinkedIn is a very intentional way of finding those ideal investors for you, building those relationships directly, and turning it into a system that once you set it up the right way, it runs 90% on autopilot and you have a consistent flow of new opportunities and new investor leads.
What sort of changes on LinkedIn have occurred over the last few years that real estate entrepreneurs should be aware of?
Yeah, well, the first change is the increase in activity, okay? So, and this change, I mean, at the moment that we're having this conversation, it's October. Just in the last month, I think engagement has increased on LinkedIn by about 30%, right? Meaning people posting, people engaging with posts. People are spending a lot more time. The average LinkedIn user is starting to pay a lot more attention. And with that being said, it's become more of a personality-driven platform, where before it used to be kind of a stuffy resume platform, where now, especially with how the world's changed, people are seeking those true relationships. They're seeking to feel connected, right? And there's an opportunity to create personality-driven content and personality-driven messaging that's different than ever before. And all this started, and when I wrote my book, this had just happened, when Microsoft purchased LinkedIn for $26.2 billion. And that was way back in 2015. And the other thing to understand with LinkedIn, they internally, the way these social media companies earn revenue, one of the ways that LinkedIn earns revenue is they sell advertising. So the more engaged people are, the better user experience is, the more ads LinkedIn is going to sell. And it's completely revamped in terms of the user interface. The accessibility, meaning the ease of using the platform, has completely shifted, where before you used to have to be kind of tech savvy to navigate around LinkedIn and know how to use it. The technical side of it is starting to look a lot more like other social media. It's truly becoming a social media with a mix of a professional platform. The other thing that's really changed recently, there's a number of things we can go into, but I'll stop with this one, is LinkedIn profiles and LinkedIn business pages have become more important than ever. And that's because even if you never spend any time on LinkedIn, when someone goes and Googles your name before doing business with you or before investing with you, okay, and best believe in today's day and age, they're going to Google your name, especially when making a decision to write you a check for upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars at times, your LinkedIn profile is going to be one of the first things that comes up, okay? Even if you don't spend any time on LinkedIn, just because of LinkedIn's power with the search engine. engines. Okay. So it's important, if you do nothing else, to have a profile that builds trust and that differentiates you from other people in your space, so that your potential investors or potential clients feel understood. Okay. And LinkedIn business pages are very much kind of how Facebook business pages used to be. If you've got a Facebook business page or a fan page right now, you know as well as anyone that you can have 100,000 likes on your page and you can post something and have 10 or 20 people see it, right? Because Facebook wants you to pay to play. Versus LinkedIn, there's a lot more organic free reach where you can have 10 or 20 followers on your business page and you could potentially have thousands of people see what you posted. So there's a number of differences. And right now there's an area of opportunity on LinkedIn. Okay. Right now it's a gold mine. And I think right now, especially for finding investors in the next 18 months or so, it's really the window to get in early and use it to build the investor relationships that you're looking for so you can raise more capital and scale your real estate projects or your syndication.
What are some of the specific ways that folks that are trying to get investors into their deals, that what are some specific ways they can build lists on LinkedIn members that would be applicable to their deals?
So along Eric's question, I would like to ask if you can explain to someone who's just belongs to LinkedIn but never really uses it, how does Sales Navigator help? Is that one of those tools? Because there's a difference between paid LinkedIn and free LinkedIn, and what are the tools like Sales Navigator that can really take you to another level?
We threw a lot at you.
Well, the questions actually segue perfectly. Funny enough, you'll see what I mean in a second, because there's 5 ways to build lists of potential investors using LinkedIn. Okay. And this applies to building lists of potential clients too, for the real estate brokers who may be tuning in. Okay. So the first way is using the free search on LinkedIn. It's the search where you can search and, based on some basic filters, you can build a filtered list. Okay. That's the first way. Second way, if you have a list from another source, let's say you have an email list or a spreadsheet of accredited investors from another source, you can upload them into LinkedIn and connect them and have those people be part of your network. Third way is to search by LinkedIn groups. Okay. So LinkedIn groups are more based on affinity, based on interest. There's all sorts of interest groups on LinkedIn. Fourth way is using LinkedIn advertising, the paid traffic platform on LinkedIn. For most people, I don't recommend using it because these strategies that we're talking about today are organic, meaning you don't have to spend money on LinkedIn ads to make this effective. And the fifth way is the second part to your question, Sales Navigator. Okay, so the LinkedIn premium account. And what that does is it really takes the LinkedIn search and it allows you to get the most specific and targeted search and targeting in terms of marketing and lead generation anywhere out there. I don't care if you're comparing it to Facebook, Twitter, Google, the targeting that you can attain on LinkedIn is that much more powerful because there's about 15 to 20 different filters you can use inside of the premium account, inside of Sales Navigator. Now, getting just the old school premium account or the recruiter account, it won't do you justice like it will getting Sales Navigator. So in Sales Navigator, there's 15 to 20 different filters that you can use for building these lists. And the way that I like to explain it to people is, especially for finding investors, we talk about a concept called X factor list building. Okay, so I want you to imagine 3 circles. Okay, circle number 1 is targeting someone by their ideal income range, right? So high income earners. So people who, let's say they're corporate executives, or let's say they're CEOs, right? People who are earning at least in the 6-figure range, right? So CEOs of companies, for example, that have 1,000+ employees, living in, let's say, the San Francisco area, that there's almost 100% chance that they're earning a multiple 6-figure income. Okay, that's one of the circles. Second one is ideal net worth range. So the way to look at that on LinkedIn, and no, you can't just put in a net worth number and LinkedIn spits out people who have that net worth. Not quite how it works, but you can look at income longevity. So if someone's been a CEO of a company in the Bay Area for the past 25 years, there's a great chance they're a high net worth individual, right? And there's you can search by occupation, you can search by, all these different things, some other types of affinities as well. So in the third circle is the ideal mindset. Okay. So by mindset, we really think about, and we want to put ourselves in people's shoes, where we think about their mentality. Do they have the investor mindset? Do they have a growth mindset? Do they already have a predisposed interest in alternative investments or real estate, right? There's different filters you can use in Sales Navigator to determine that. And the sweet spot is to build targeted lists of people who are in an overlap of all three, and to be able to market to those people and target those potential investor leads on LinkedIn. And the same applies for finding clients as well, but for today's guy, it especially applies when it comes to finding investors.
Let's talk a little bit about mistakes, because again, getting back to, most people don't understand LinkedIn. They tend to barge in. Well, they make a number of mistakes, but perhaps the most common ones, they just barge in and talk about them and talk about, trying to get a deal, trying to get a sale, trying to raise money, whatever it might be, without really going through the process. So, what are some of the other major mistakes that people make on LinkedIn and trying to build their list and market to high profile investors?
Yeah, so the first mistake, you mentioned it perfectly. I call it the vomit message. Okay, and we've all gotten those on LinkedIn if we've spent any time there, where someone connects, and as soon as you connect with them, you get this long message trying to pitch you the next best thing since sliced bread, right? And it just annoys people, it bothers people, and frankly, it doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work nearly enough to do it. Okay, so that's one of the first big mistakes, is thinking, you know what, if I could just figure out the perfect message, then instantly someone is going to buy my stuff, or instantly they're going to go and they're going to write me a check. Especially now, people are more discerning than ever. They're craving that trust and relationship more than ever. And that's why it's important to take a different approach. Okay. And that different approach that we can talk about in a second too is a multi-step messaging approach based around something we call trust-centered messaging. Okay. And that's something we can get into as well. So some other big mistakes, I guess the biggest mistake of them all is doing nothing, right? Is, saying, well, it's LinkedIn is an online platform and I don't have the time, or what if it doesn't work? Or, what if, people what if themselves and do nothing, right? And inaction is the first mistake. Even imperfect action is better than no action, right? So that's the first kind of big mistake, is doing nothing. And I think one of the reasons for that is people sometimes think that they have to spend 10 hours a day on LinkedIn to get any results. And it couldn't be further from the truth, right? In fact, there is an inverse correlation, right? So a lot of people think that the more time you spend on LinkedIn, the more successful you'll be. Usually the exact opposite is true, okay? And what we mean by that is, when you need a system, right? Because most people don't have any system. They're not using LinkedIn intentionally in terms of finding clients or investors. And you need to have a system in place where, if your outcome is to attract a certain kind of investor, or to book X amount of meetings per month with potential investors, you need to be able to reverse engineer that outcome when you create your LinkedIn lead generation system. Okay. And so it's not having that intention, not having a methodology, not having that system in place. And then the other big mistake that I see a lot of people making is people think they have to post 5 times a day, right? Couldn't be further from the truth, especially when it comes to finding investors. The intimacy of that conversation and generating that lead, that comes down to usually direct messaging and having a profile that builds trust as well. And the great thing is, to save you time on LinkedIn as well, there's different automation software, different tools out there where 90% of the outreach, until someone actually responds, is it engaged, you can automate it so that 90% of it is done for you using automation. And there's some different things available there as well. So I think a lot of people, they make some of those key mistakes. And a lot of people make it all about themselves too, where they're not building trust, they're not showing empathy. And, online, you have to understand it's a very different conversation than a conversation in person, because online you have a split second to get that person's attention in the first place. Otherwise, it's a lost cause, right? Especially initially when they don't know you from anyone else, there's a very small window of opportunity and you have to be precise. And I think a lot of people miss that message and make it all about themselves and market themselves in a way that completely turns off potential investors and doesn't build trust, and they're left scratching their heads, or they do nothing at all.
How are you making those introductions then? Because, listen, we know we've all dealt with it before with people hitting us on LinkedIn, and then all of a sudden you get a 15-paragraph email about how great they are, how great their company is, and no one gets past the second sentence. So how do you recommend folks to when they're reaching out to sort of make it very brief and try to and punch it home that they can at least get the person's attention, because you're really not trying to sell them on the first outreach. You're just trying to make a connection. So what are some of the methods that you would use for when you find the connections you want to connect with?
So the very first thing to understand here, okay, is you want to give value. Okay. So you want to give value using your messaging. Having a profile that looks good, that builds trust, is gonna make your messaging response rate go much, much higher. Having good hyper-specific targeting is also going to lead to higher responses and more leads generated. Now, there's 3 ways to give value in direct messaging that actually work. Okay, none of them is sending a 15-paragraph pitch. Okay, there's 3 ways. The first one is sharing a piece of content. Okay, sharing something out there that either you created or that someone else created that's relevant to that person, that's going to be intriguing enough for them to want to know more. It could be a webinar, it could be an infographic, it could be an article on Forbes, you name it. It's picking a piece of content that's going to be highly relevant and that's going to provide value to that person. Okay, and sharing that through direct messaging. Second way to build value is I call it challenge awareness, is to call out an experience they may be having, a specific challenge or issue or thing or obstacle that they're probably facing, and to create a message that's based around empathy, okay? To show them that you're aware of that challenge, to give them more awareness of that challenge, and encourage them to want to learn more about next steps, or encourage them to gauge where they're at with this and start the dialogue going, right? To start that conversation that way. And the third way is by asking what I call a magic question, okay? So by asking a question where you first establish the relationship based on points of commonality, and a big thing with all these is you want to be concise with your messages, okay? Being super concise is everything in keeping it simple, okay? So ending with a question, asking them a question that gets them responding, that gets them what we call hooked, okay, into the conversation, wanting to know more. So those are the 3 tactical ways of giving value through direct messages. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's different combinations depending on the types of investors you're looking for. But the key thing is, with the automation software, you can have these multiple steps pre-programmed, and that way every message the person receives, they're getting a piece of value and they're getting an opportunity to engage, where ultimately you want to take the relationship beyond LinkedIn, especially with an investor, and that's what works really, really well.
The problem, with these messages is I'm not sure what percentage of messages actually even get answered, because most of them just seem to be like flat out sales calls that nobody cares about.
Well, that's the whole point. Yeah. I mean, he's saying don't do those things. I mean, he's like Yakov, for example, with me, when I sent a message out to him, he responded, and I can't remember the message, but I think it was something like, "How did you find me?" or something. I don't remember. I'm curious, how did you find me, or something like that? I don't remember what your LinkedIn message was, Yakov, but it was one of these like, okay, well, this person on the other end really did take the time to type this email, so I need to respond to him.
Yeah, and the key is for it to feel personalized, right? Even if we automate it and scale it, it's important to either have the automation personalize it, or to have templates where your assistant or an admin person can manage that piece for you, right? Which is a big thing of what we talk about as well. So it's important. And then, Steve, to your point, with a lot of the messages and the open rates and the response rates, what's really interesting is we all get a ton of emails, right? So your open rate on your messages inside of LinkedIn Messenger is going to be astronomically higher than your open rate. Let's say you send out an email using an autoresponder or a different tool, right? Your open rate on LinkedIn is almost always going to be much higher. So then it's about, okay, now they're seeing the message. First of all, formatting the message so that it doesn't look like a lot to read, right? It doesn't look like the great next American novel, where instead it looks like something that's easy to digest, and then it really hits home. In the first couple sentences, that person knows what's in it for them, and there's enough intrigue built. So you want to think about the mindset behind it, and what's it like receiving those messages on the other end, as Eric, you just pointed out.
Yeah. And I know that we have a lot of agents and wholesalers that will listen to this podcast, and their method of marketing is email blasts. So I'm hoping they're not taking away from this. So like, let me connect with people and then let me send you my listings. Oh my God, I want to kill you if you do that. I mean, they've already dirtied my inbox. I probably get 40 broker emails a day for stuff that I did not ask for. I call it me mail. Nobody cares about you. Why are you sending me me mail? You're sending whatever you want, what your agenda is. Please don't do this with LinkedIn. It's a pure strategy right now to get into. Don't dirty it with mass messaging.
And yet it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, you have this targeted list that Yakov is talking about of high net worth individuals. Why wouldn't you just spend a little bit of time trying to build a relationship with them? Don't treat them like somebody who's buying a pair of shoes.
That's well said.
So let's talk a little bit about real estate entrepreneur trying to optimize their LinkedIn profile for building credibility. What would you tell them? Let's say they're trying to attract high net worth investors, real estate buyers, whatever it might be. How would you tell them, give them some steps to build optimize their profile?
Yeah, so there's three major profile mistakes that I see across the board from real estate entrepreneurs. And so by avoiding the mistakes, you're going to be headed on the path to making your profile what we call irresistible to the ideal investors you're looking for. So the first mistake that I see a lot of real estate entrepreneurs making is, I call this the corporate resume, okay? And meaning they have a nice looking, nice sounding executive bio, and their LinkedIn profile is me, and it's just like a resume, right? And the problem with that is the potential investors on LinkedIn, before they know why they should care, they don't care about you yet, right? You haven't given them any value, you haven't created any relevance for them, right? So they're not going to sit there and be wowed by your executive bio yet because they don't care yet.
Yeah.
And the big thing with that too is, a lot of people, that's what they have on LinkedIn. They have this resume sounding thing that they're so proud of, but people's eyes just gloss over. No one cares, right? They're going to care about your resume and your track record once they know what's in it for them, okay? And that's what your profile needs to establish, and establish that very quickly. Second big mistake is, I call this the wide-eyed squirrel, okay? And what I mean by that is sometimes people will have 5 different jobs or businesses on their profile and say that they're doing 5 different things. And it confuses. If I'm a potential investor and I see that, I say next, because it's confusing, right? It's like, well, the whole jack of all trades, master of none, that's exactly what people position themselves as. So even if you're transitioning from your W-2, or even if you're just getting into real estate investing, you can have both on your profile, but the story you need to tell and the succinct messaging you need to have needs to leverage the experience you've had before real estate investing, right? It's important to use that profile as a tool for building trust. And then the third mistake that I see quite often when it comes to LinkedIn profiles, and we've talked about the corporate resume, we've talked about the wide-eyed squirrel, I call it the 90s marketing brochure, okay? And this is where someone lists all the features and benefits of investing with them and kind of goes for the jugular right on the profile. Again, you haven't established relevance yet. People don't care yet, right? So it completely misses the point, and it comes off as sleazy. So those are the 3 kind of camps that I see most real estate entrepreneurs falling into. The big things that you want to ask yourself is, what would my ideal investor think, right? What's it like looking at the profile from their perspective, right? You want a headline that captivates their attention, okay? You want a picture that has good lighting where they can actually see you enough to trust you, not a picture from 5 years ago, okay? You want to have an about section that reads very much like a journey that people can take, that, highlights some of their challenges, highlights some of your questions. And one of the best ways to establish your expertise on your profile is to show people that you get them, is to show people that you understand questions they have or their level of awareness, because some people, maybe your ideal investor doesn't know what a real estate syndication is, right? Maybe they don't know how a real estate fund works, okay? Maybe they don't know that it's possible to passively invest in real estate and not deal with the headaches of being a landlord, right? These are all things that we have to meet people where they're at. And you want to look at your profile as an educational piece that's educational enough to build build relevance and to build interest and intrigue people so that they want to know more, so that they want to take those next steps.
So we've been talking mostly about investors, but I guess you're talking about using the same techniques no matter what you're doing, just the same kind of brush, just to create awareness and educate along the way. So if you're looking for buyers, you'll tell them upfront how you can help them and what you've done, rather than just giving them a dry resume.
Exactly, and it's around things like common misconceptions, things like frequently asked questions, common mistakes. There's 3 P's that I look at when evaluating a LinkedIn profile, and it's presence, right? So having the right keywords, areas of expertise, having the right sections filled in, having it be visually appealing so that it's not just all clumped in long paragraphs, right? So the look of it, presence, that's the first one. Second one is positioning, okay? Positioning yourself as the authority, positioning yourself as someone who's a credible expert, as someone who they can trust. And the best way to do that isn't just to tell about your entire track story and, resume. It's to, answer some questions people may be asking themselves, okay? It's to address some concerns they may have. It's to address current events, right? So these are all ways to continue to establish your expertise and position yourself as that trusted advisor. And the third P is persuasion, okay? So building a case for taking the next step, building a case for doing whatever it is to find out more, right? And that next action could be going to your website and downloading something. It could be booking a call in your calendar. It could be giving you a call, right? Whatever that next step is in your process, and very clearly having a call to action. So you want your profile to flow and have those 3 Ps included there.
It's interesting because I go back to business school days and there we did the 4 Ps, and it was a different world. Now we're at the 3 Ps and marketing, and everything's just changed so dramatically, and we're still using P's, just different P's.
Well, and it is interesting because your LinkedIn page, it started as a resume, as you said. That was probably LinkedIn 1.0, and now it really is where it should have been to begin with. Not about you, but about your clients. And so everything should be focused towards them, whether it be frequently asked questions or relevance or objections they may have, or, really talking about your understanding or showing your understanding that you care about them and you understand their problems and how you can help solve them. That's what it sounds like.
Exactly. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, because that's one of the most powerful ways to build trust is empathy and showing people that they're being understood.
Mm-hmm. And so give us sort of a 30,000-foot view of how that would look for a real estate syndicator, somebody putting together deals. Like, what's some of the language that you would use to get the attention of potential investors?
Well, I'll tell you what I wouldn't do first and foremost, and we'll address a question that comes up sometimes from investors, like, well, how do I make sure this is SEC compliant, right? And it's a very valid question. So let's talk about that. And first and foremost, I'm not an SEC attorney. I don't play one on TV. I want to be very clear about that. So the big thing that you shouldn't do on your profile is you shouldn't talk about, specific language around your deals and how much money you're raising, all that kind of stuff. Not appropriate to put on your profile, right? Sure. Just like it isn't appropriate to send specific deals to people right after you connect with them on LinkedIn. It's just like it makes no sense. Yet some people are tempted to do it, right? So instead, when we look at specific wording, we want to look at, because, and this is something that we talk about a lot too, you're going to be talking differently if your ideal investor is, for example, a tech CEO versus if your ideal investor is a Yale professor, right? I mean, those could be 2 high net worth individuals with capital to invest with you, but depending on your angle, your language and your style needs to change. Otherwise, you can't talk to those, just like you wouldn't have a conversation with those 2 people in person the same way. Why have your messaging be a one-size-fits-all online, right? So it's being very clear, and we call it magnetizing for your list. So magnetizing your messaging to attract those ideal investors that you're looking for. Now, as far as specific wording goes and specific language goes, there's a lot of different directions to potentially go in, but some big things you want to let people know, that you're that you have this network of partners, right? You're talking about things like your investor club, right? And letting people know that, you're only interested in doing business with partners who you've already built relationships with, right? That's really key. There's also a technique we call, and this is from the world of something called NLP. It's called pre-framing, where you're addressing hesitations, you're addressing key questions up front, rather than having those questions lingering in their minds and stopping them from taking action. You're addressing some of those with your profile wording, and you want to keep it succinct, and you also want to keep it not in corporate speak, okay, right? Because sometimes a lot of people, kind of as a defense mechanism, a lot of people are afraid of putting themselves out there, and there's a mindset that comes with marketing yourself and generating leads and growing your business, right? And so sometimes what people do is they'll hide behind really big words, and they'll hide behind complicated lingo, okay? Instead, understand most of these people probably don't know that much about passive real estate investing. They may know what it is. They probably don't know what opportunities are out there. And there's probably certain objections or hesitations that they have that it's better to address those earlier rather than later.
Good advice. Yakov, it's been really a terrific discussion. I know you have some events that are coming up. Would you mind maybe sharing some of that information with us before we let you go?
Yeah, and I'd love it if we could include a link in the show notes as well. But we've got some online events coming up. For listeners of the show, they're going to be free to attend. If you liked what we talked about today, we get into more detail into some more of the granular things, and I'll actually break down the methodology along with some case studies and examples you can use for finding the investors you're looking for using LinkedIn. And you can go to linkedleads.us/RC webinar. And you can register for one of our upcoming online events for free using that link. That's linkedleads.us/RC webinar.
Awesome. And if someone would like to send you an email or contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you're going to be shocked at what I say, but I'm going to say, find me on LinkedIn.
That's where you found him last time.
That's right. Awesome. Yakov, really appreciate the time. Stephen, anything before we let Yakov go?
No, thank you, Yakov. I've never been able to mine or use it to its potential. So for me, this was an eye-opener, and I hope it will be for a bunch of other people also.
Awesome. Glad to hear that.
I really appreciate it, buddy. We will talk soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And that was Yakov Smart talking LinkedIn. Stephen, what were your thoughts?
Well, so to me, LinkedIn is kind of like describing a woman. Everybody knows what a woman is, but nobody knows how they really work. You're not sure what they're thinking. And so for me to get some insight into how it really works and how to use it effectively was a lesson in moving forward.
No, and you talk about in terms of being a woman, it really is about a relationship, because it's no different than any type of human relationship. And it never ceases to amaze me how people misuse, whether it be Facebook or email or LinkedIn on their marketing efforts. And I think listening to someone like Yakov talk about systematizing it, turning the system into about the prospect and not about you. It's about that, know me, trust me, like me, do business with me. I mean, that's really the process. So, LinkedIn is sort of uncharted territory right now. Hopefully we're not going to see a lot of people enter it and use it improperly, because what's going to end up happening is going to happen with like every other media tool that we've had from email on, that people end up just spamming and before long it becomes a useless tool. Right now it seems to be, and I've seen it when he talks about it, I've seen it from anecdotally on my own, that there are people using it to build their businesses, and they're forming those relationships and they're interacting with each other as social media is meant to do. So it's good to see. It was great to have Yakov sort of put this together for us in a concise format. I'm looking forward to listening to some of his seminars and learn some more from him. Stephen, Yakov was a great guest. Where can we find other great guests?
So the place to go is www.investfloridashow.com, where you can go to our archives, but also download the app onto your mobile device so you can listen while you're on the road or in the gym or doing whatever you're doing. But it's a great way to get the information.
Guys, as always, we appreciate the time that you invest with us each and every episode. And until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odom and Steven Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.